Well, good morning. How are you all today? And welcome to Integrative Preparedness. I'm Steve Smith. I want to talk about the deep state today. A lot of people are concerned about the so-called deep state, and a lot of people who are concerned don't really understand what it is. They've heard a little bit here and a little bit there, and they have this idea that there are a lot of bureaucrats, instilled or installed in different federal departments that have a particular political bent, and they think that they are working against the the certain people. Let me just put it that way, right? Well, it is that, but it's a lot more than that, and so I want to get into that. I've been studying this stuff for since the '70s, and haven't really talked about it very much. But there's something that came up that I'm going to talk about it today, and I'm going to recommend a resource for those of you who want kind of the introduction into how pervasive the deep state really is. Before we get to that, if you haven't registered for the first annual Stonemont Integrative Preparedness Summer Gathering coming up July 13th and you want to come, you better get at it. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but you can register through the website stonemont.us. Go over to the events tab and get yourself registered. I'll talk about that. Hopefully, I'll remember to talk about that a little bit before, a little bit later in this. The deep state, what is it? Number one, well, I'll tell you, the explanation for that, like I said, I started studying this stuff in the 70s. The explanation alone would probably, last more than I want to do an entire video on. But let me just say that it is a widespread and deep, they ought to call it the deep and wide state, pervasive group of people, organizations, both governmental and non-governmental, that whose purpose it has long been to control pretty much everything that you do. Okay, and a lot of people will think that it's simply, within the government of our country, if you're in the United States, the U.S. government, or Australia, Canada, whatever, it all works together. And I think a lot of people just don't realize how the intertwining web of it. It's a worldwide web of government and banking and information and everything. And there is no beating it. I'll just put it real simple. If people think that they're going to fight it and win, I would caution them against thinking that, because it's just not going to happen. Not going to happen. It has metastasized throughout the world and throughout the systems of the drivers of the world, to the extent that I don't think it can be extricated, but it can be. Should I say resisted? Should I say escape? I don't know exactly, how I want to put that right now. But I'll simply say this, that you cannot deal with a problem that you don't understand. Okay. And understanding a problem is the first step. Well, first off, recognizing there is a problem, and then understanding that problem. And just like in so many areas of life and preparedness itself, a lot of people attempt to solve a problem that they don't understand. So understanding is the first step. I want to give you a resource today, a book that I highly recommend for everyone, even if you have been studying this stuff for a while. It would be good. It's a good introduction to the true deep states, written by a friend of mine, Mike Morton. And I mentioned this on yesterday's video. It is called The Deep State Uncovered, Military and Paramilitary Operations Exposing the Hidden Agenda of the Global Elite. See, he says right there exactly what I said. It's global in nature, and it's run by the elite. And to be honest, the governments, the news agencies, such as that, they're just the tools that are used by the global elite to get to get done what they want to get done. I'll read it on the back here. And then I'm gonna read to you. I highly suggest you get this book. This is his first book. There's a second one, uh, Uncovering the Deep State Part Two. I think the Puppet Masters is what it's called. Now I should tell you something about Mike. Maybe it says in here a little bit about him, and it would be best if I just read that if it says anything about him. Um, no, it doesn't. But anyway, Mike is former law enforcement. He's retired law enforcement in the United States. He has years and years of training in hand-to-hand and combatives, and well, he came up through the Bushido-Khan system. Some of you will understand what that means. Most won't, but I'm not going to go into it. He currently lives in Colombia, the country, where he trains the Colombian police and military in hand-to-hand and other things. And he's had an interest in this for a long time. I'll read the back, and then I want to read you the chapters. Just not the whole thing. Don't worry, but the chapter headings, so you'll know what's in here. Okay. So on the back it says, "Delve into the shadow world of the deep state." The first real mention of such an entity was by President Eisenhower. The military-industrial complex has become common terminology, but doesn't even begin to describe the labyrinth of shadow governments, transnational corporations, and private military assets they control. Well, that's the truth. And I was talking to some guys yesterday, Mike, and a couple of others, and I think we hit upon. I mentioned, when you get a peek inside the monster, it's eye opening. But most people, when you work within the system, and I call it the monster, you see things that the average person would never, ever imagine. And you understand the complexity and the power. Okay, and I'll finish this up. Uncover who really controls world banking, economies, election outcomes, and for-profit wars. You've always suspected and maybe even knew a few pieces of the puzzle. Now get detailed accounts of the real power brokers and how they affect your life and shape the world to their bidding. Okay, now that's exactly right. And like I say, the average person has no idea. So one of the things this book would be great for, it's available on Amazon. I suggest you get it. First off, it lays out in very simple format the many things I'm gonna talk to you about. And it's also a good resource for you to introduce any of your friends who maybe think you're crazy talking about the deep state, right? You got some of those? Yeah, most of us do. Well, whatever. But this is a great resource to kind of introduce those people who maybe you think are receptive or but haven't really gotten into it and don't understand it. And you know how difficult it is to sit down with somebody who doesn't really know or even suspect and try to convince them, all the hidden levers and the men behind the curtains and all that kind of stuff. This does it very well. So I'm just going to read you the content, the chapter headings, so you'll understand what it is. Okay. First chapter, Skull and Bones, 1832 to the present. Chapter 2, Bohemian Grove, 1800s to the present. Are you all familiar with what those are? Well, probably many of you are. If you're not, you need to be. The Tuskegee experiment, okay, which 1932 to 1972. Most of you have heard of that. More people, when I talk about these things, more people have heard of these things than actually know the details of these different programs. Operation Paperclip, 1945 to 1959. Most of you have heard of that. And some of you actually know what it was. Maybe you don't know, the details. Chapter 5, Operation Gladio. Chapter 6, Operation Ajax. You familiar with that one? 7, Operation Sea Spray. Chapter 8, MK Ultra. Chapter 9, Operation Mockingbird. Most of you are familiar with that. Chapter 10, the Lavon Affair. I imagine that most people aren't familiar with that. Chapter 11, the Bilderberger Group, 1954 to the present. Chapter 12, COINTELPRO. Chapter 13, Air America, Drugs, Money, and Guns. Oh, yeah. Money, drugs, what? Money, guns, and lawyers. For years and years, and I've said this. I mean, I don't know how much I want to get into it here, but it was our people bringing in China white from Southeast Asia during Vietnam, and it was as a result of our getting out of Vietnam that those drug sources had to be replaced. Initially with Mexican brown heroin, which was a low grade bunch of dirt. Nobody liked it, and that set up the table for the influx of South American, essentially Colombian cocaine. That's when I went undercover, when the cocaine started coming up from South America. But Air America was there's a couple movies out there about that in there. Well, there's one called Air America. I've never seen it. And then there was another one called Made in America, I think. I bet a lot of you all have seen those. I haven't seen those movies. I tend not to watch movies about things that I did, you know, because I will always look at it and go, oh, gee, that's, some of it's good. Some of it's good. I'll tell you, one of the guys that I visited with yesterday brought up one movie, and I've mentioned this before. You want to see probably the closest to reality that I've seen on the law enforcement, the drugs, well, I'm not going to get too deeply into it. The movie Sicario was probably closer to realism than most movies for anybody who hasn't done that in real life. And Sicario, the two, what is it? Day of the Soldado. Uh, yeah, it was okay too. Okay, chapter 14, Shadow Warriors, the Special Activities, SAD. Probably most people have never heard of the CIA SAD unit, Special Activities Division. It used to be called, now it's called the Center SAC. It's the CIA's paramilitary outfit arm. Made up mostly, they recruit mostly out of the military, a little bit of law enforcement, and a couple of other things. But they are, well, they are. If you don't know about them, read about them. Okay, most people never heard of them. I told a friend of mine about them some time back. He's pretty tuned up, and he'd never heard of them. And I said, "Well, you wanna know a little bit more about how things are done in the world? Look into SAD or SAC. It's called now. They change the names all the time. Remember back in the Vietnam era when the SOG, Special Operations Group, that name was calling too much attention to the news media, and so they changed the name to, what did they change it to? It wasn't. It was Studies and Observation, right? So it sounded like a bunch of guys sitting around in an office, reading newspapers or something, looking at maps. So anyway, that's I'm sure that's a good chapter. 15, the Iran-Contra affair. 16, Operation Fast and Furious. There's one near and dear to our hearts, right? 17, X Key Score. I bet most of them never heard of that one. 18, Operation Timber Sycamore. 19, Operation Choke Point. And he's got, and then, I see he's got Operation Choke Point 2. The U.S. government's efforts to regulate, which means control, cryptocurrency. And then on and on. Then there's an epilogue here. So that gives you an idea. Okay. All right. That's good. I'm gonna leave it there. That's Mike's book. It is a book that every one of you ought to read, and you ought to own it. And I don't promote many books here except my own, for which people get all upset that a writer would actually. No, not most people, not you all. I know, so many of you are my readers, and I'll tell you a little bit about how to get the books for any of you who don't know. Right now, I want to concentrate on Mike's book. This is a book that every one of you should have, every one of you should read, And if you really have friends that you care about, this is one of those books that you can use as a tool to help spread the word. Okay, spread the word around, and because the more people who understand this, it's like cockroaches. The best way to fight them is to turn on the light of truth. The more people that know the truth, the better things are going to be. And like I say, I have no hope. This is not a war that's going to be won. Okay, it's entrenched too deeply. It exists within the fibers of too many organizations and governments and such. You're never going to get them out. But hopefully, by knowing it, you'll be able to mitigate its effect on you. Okay, and I think Mike's done a heck of a job as far as coming out with this. I'd say it's probably a good thing that he lives in Colombia. Mike tells me it's great down there. He loves Colombia. He says it's like living in the United States during the 1960s. Not all that government control over everything. Pretty much everybody handles their own affairs. And he says whenever he comes back up to the States, because he's married, and I believe his wife is Colombian. Whenever he comes back up to the States after a couple of weeks, he can't wait to get out of here and get back down. And I'm sure you all can well understand that, right? So one more before I close this out. There it is. Michael Morton, The Deep State Uncovered, an important tool for you to have. And then when you're done with this, buy his second one, Deep State Uncovered 2, The Puppet Masters. Okay? All right. Like I said before, if you're wanting to come to the gathering, the Stonemont Integrative Preparedness Gathering, it's July 13th, coming up, and it's in Lenexa, Kansas. All of the information is on the website, and I always put the links down below in the information box. We do need you to register. It doesn't cost anything, but we need to know how many people are going to be there for a couple of reasons. This is the official mug for the gathering that people who come will be able to get if they want one. And no, you can't order this one if you don't come. This is just for the people who come. And I know, I've had people say, "Oh man, it's conflicting. I already have things planned." I get that. We're sorry we won't be able to see this year. Maybe next year. Yeah, I'm going to spend the rest of my day shipping out a big load of books, signing, and shipping more books. I know a lot of you out there are waiting for your books, and I was waiting on, as I was telling you, I was waiting on the big order to come in because I had sold out. But I got it in, and so that one's coming out. My books, if I haven't, how do I show them here? Let me pick them up here for those of you who may not know. My books, the Stonemont series, The Reversion, The Revival, The Renewal, and Appeal to Heaven, The Blessings of Freedom, Hostages to Fortune. The 7th one, On Wings of Eagles, will be, I'm just finishing up the editing on that. That should be done in the next couple of days, and then I'll send it off and make it available. These are available through Amazon. I put the link down there below. I tell people, this is the complete plan of preparing for, surviving, and rebuilding after a complete collapse of everything. And people always ask me. Well, I'll just put it this way: I've never been asked a question that I haven't already answered in detail in this series. It covers more things than you can imagine. And I did a couple of things. Now we are allowing pre-orders, not through Amazon, but if you do it through our website, stonemont.us, you can pre-order On Wings Like Eagles, the 7th book. And then we also, in response to some requests from a lot of people, we also now have a one-click option that you can buy the entire set, which will include, but I won't be able to ship it until the new book is out. But it's kind of a pre-order of the whole set, which will include the 7th book and the Stonemont Notebook for a nice discount if you buy the whole set. Get a nice discount on that. And that's all available on the website, stonemont.us. Okay, I don't think there's any problem that is more threatening to our continued quality of life than the deep state. Okay, and like I said, I haven't talked about it a lot because it's not a problem that can be solved, although it is something that you need to be aware of so that you can mitigate its effects on you, right? Okay, and you want to do that. And Mike's book is a great way to do that. So think about this. And after you read this book, you will see many things in the world differently. Okay? Seriously. So get that. It's on Amazon. Michael Morton, The Deep State Uncovered. Get it. Okay, I'm going to go back to signing and shipping out a bunch of books. You all have a good day. Remember that we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow, because you're only going to live as well tomorrow as you prepare to. And the time to prepare is today. So get out there and do something, all right? And I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.